Tonight's story is not about revenge, it's about rebirth. Meet Clara, the family scapegoat who was never supposed to shine. But when she uncovers a secret and wins $12 million, she doesn't just escape her past, she builds a future no one can steal. Welcome to Flame Fate Chronicles, where every silence has a reason, and every story has its reckoning. This is The Light I Became. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. You don't realize you're the scapegoat of your family until much later when you're old enough to count all the birthdays they forgot, all the apologies they never gave, and all the praise they saved for someone else. In my case, that someone else was Vivian, my sister. My parents' pride and joy, and I was just Clara. The other one. The girl who got what was left. Growing up, I thought it was normal to be the background character in your own life. Vivian got the piano lessons, the birthday parties with pony rides and balloon arches. I got whatever decorations were left over from hers, plus one homemade cake, usually half frosted and slanted. When she turned 13, my parents hired a photographer to follow her around for the day like she was a celebrity. When I turned 13, they gave me $20 and told me not to spend it all in one place. I wish I was exaggerating. Vivian had honey blonde hair, green eyes, and this natural glow that made strangers stop her on the street to say she looked like a movie star. My mom always said she looked just like me when I was younger. I had dark brown curls, deep-set eyes, and an awkward smile I tried to hide in photos. No one said I looked like anyone. When I asked, they just said, "You're unique, Clara." They always said that with a tone. Like unique was just a polite way of saying different. The earliest memory I have of being the other daughter was when I was 7. Vivian had won an art contest at school, a painting of a flower or something. My mom took her out of school early to get ice cream, then threw a little party that night with cupcakes and sparklers. That same day, I came home with my first spelling bee ribbon. Blue. I handed it to my dad, proud. He looked at it for maybe 2 seconds before saying, "That's great, Clara. Now go help your sister set the table." And that was it. No fridge magnet, no phone call to Grandma, not even a well done. Just go help. So I did. As we got older, things didn't change. They just got more obvious. Vivian was the star of every holiday card, the only one with framed photos on the living room wall. She got her own room by age 10. I shared mine with laundry baskets until I moved out at 18. I was always expected to understand, to sacrifice, to make things easier for everyone else. And I did. Because I thought that if I gave enough, one day, they'd finally see me. They never did. By the time we were adults, Vivian was a social media influencer with 600,000 followers, a part-time modeling career, and a boyfriend who looked like he belonged on the cover of GQ. I was working double shifts at a bookstore cafe downtown, renting a 1-bedroom apartment above a dry cleaner, and budgeting every grocery run down to the last cent. My parents still called every week, not to talk to me, just to brag about Vivian. Viv made the cover of that local fashion mag again. She's hosting a dinner for her brand partners this week. You should come help serve wine, Clara. Did you see her new post? Her hair looks amazing, just like mine in the 80s. They always said that last part with a chuckle, like they'd won some genetic lottery. I used to smile and nod, but eventually I stopped picking up. I knew I wasn't the favorite, but it took me years to understand that I wasn't even considered equal. Last Thanksgiving, I showed up with homemade stuffing and a bottle of cider I'd been saving for a month. Vivian showed up 40 minutes late with a guy she just started dating, a fur-lined coat, and a bottle of overpriced champagne with a limited edition sticker. Guess which one Mom talked about for the rest of the night? Spoiler alert, it wasn't the stuffing. It wasn't just the favoritism. It was the constant reminders that I should be grateful for whatever scraps they gave me. Like the time Mom offered me one of Vivian's old coats when mine tore in the rain. "It's a little big," she said, handing it over. "But you don't mind secondhand, right?" Like when Dad joked that I had champagne taste on a tap water budget. Or when Vivian posted a photo of the two of us and captioned it, "Sister time with my favorite charity case." She deleted it after I texted her. She never apologized. And still, part of me kept showing up, hoping they'd change, hoping I'd matter. I always assumed my role in the family was something I had to earn, like if I just achieved enough, if I just tried hard enough, they'd finally treat me like I belonged. But what I didn't know then, what I would discover much later, was that I didn't need to earn a place in that family, because I was never truly in it to begin with. That realization? It didn't come from one moment. It came from a series of quiet, sharp ones. The missed birthday calls. The way Mom still addressed every card Vivian and family, even when I was the one hosting dinner. The way Dad once asked if I'd be offended if he just left everything to your sister, since she's better with money. They didn't even hide it anymore. And then one day, everything changed. Not because they saw me, but because I bought a $2 lottery ticket at the gas station on my way home from work and won $12 million. I stared at the ticket for hours. I checked it 5 times, scanned it with the app, took it to the store, watched the clerk's eyes go wide. I laughed, cried, shook, paced my apartment for 2 days straight without telling a soul. And for the first time in my life, I didn't feel powerless. I felt like the ground had shifted beneath me, like I finally held the cards. Because money doesn't solve everything, but it sure as hell shines a spotlight on who's only around when they think you have it. And I was about to find out exactly what kind of family I'd been born into, or rather, the kind I'd been given. I didn't tell anyone about the win. Not at first. There was something sacred about those $12 million. Not because of what they could buy, but because of what they finally gave me. Silence, control, distance. I had never had that before. I kept the ticket hidden under my mattress for 3 days before cashing it in. Not because I didn't trust the system, I didn't trust them. The people who had taught me my entire life that what was mine could be taken. That what I earned wasn't really mine at all. I didn't quit my job right away either. Instead, I went to work the next morning and made oat milk lattes like I wasn't sitting on a fortune. I listened to regulars talk about their bad bosses, their relationship drama, their overdue rent. I smiled, nodded, handed them their change, and thought about how easily I could change someone's life now. But I didn't. Not yet, because I wasn't sure if I was ready to change mine. I opened a private bank account under a trust name, met with a lawyer, hired a financial advisor named Jules, who wore navy pantsuits and spoke to me like I was royalty, even when I showed up in sneakers and a cardigan that smelled like espresso. She told me I was smart for staying anonymous. She told me, "The people who love you for you will show up with or without the money. The rest will come crawling when they smell it." She had no idea how true that was. A week after I claimed the winnings, I got a voicemail from Mom. It was the same tone she always used, that chipper, distracted hum like she was already halfway to something more important. "Hey, sweetheart. Just checking in. Your dad said we haven't heard from you in a bit. Viv's got a big event next week. She's being honored by the regional fashion board or something. You should come. Oh, and your sister's car broke down again. Poor thing. Click. No. How are you? No. We miss you. Just Vivian's fashion award and Vivian's car. I didn't call back. Instead, I got dressed slowly, deliberately. I put on the nicest dress I owned, a navy midi wrap with sleeves that fluttered when I moved. I slipped on shoes that weren't scuffed at the toes, tucked my curls into a neat bun, put on a little lipstick, and I drove to their house. Not to tell them, just to watch. It was Sunday dinner, my least favorite tradition. Their house still smelled like rosemary and arrogance. Vivian greeted me at the door, wearing a white satin blouse and diamond studs the size of raindrops. She kissed my cheek like we hadn't spent the last 29 years in silent competition I never signed up for. "Still working at the cafe?" she asked, smiling. "Still dating your intern?" I replied. Her smile tightened. "He's in management now." I shrugged. "So are garbage collectors. Some titles are just shinier." She walked off. I walked in. Dinner was exactly what you'd expect. Vivian talked about brand partnerships and engagement ring previews. My mom gushed about her signature lasagna, a frozen one from Trader Joe's she'd sprinkled parsley on. Dad barely looked up from his phone until dessert. When he did, it was only to say, "You still renting that shoebox apartment, Clara?" "There's a unit open down the street from us. You know, so we can keep an eye on you." I smiled. "How thoughtful. Maybe next year you'll remember my birthday too." That earned a silence. A long one. Then Mom said, "You know we're not great with dates." "You never forget Vivian's," I replied. Vivian stirred her tea like she hadn't heard. "That's because I'm more memorable." She said it like a joke, but everyone knew she meant it. I excused myself before they could scrape the truth out of me. I walked out the front door, got in my car, and drove 3 miles before I pulled into a gas station. I sat there for 10 minutes, staring at the steering wheel, not crying, not raging, just deciding. That was the moment I realized something strange. Despite all the money in my account, I still felt like that little girl watching her sister open the better present. The one who always came in second, even when there were only 2 people running. And I hated that. So I made a vow right there in that gas station parking lot. No more showing up where I'm not seen. The next day, I called Jules, my advisor. "I want to make a donation," I told her. "To whom?" "To the library in my old neighborhood, quietly, $500,000. There was a pause on the line. "May I ask why?" I thought about it. Because it was the only place that ever felt like it saw me. The donation made headlines, local ones, small ones, enough to stir curiosity. It didn't take long for the questions to start swirling. Then came the text. From Vivian. "Did you really give $500,000 to a library?" "What, Fef?" No greeting, no warmth, just shock and disbelief, and behind it, a flicker of suspicion. She could feel the world shifting. She just didn't know how far it would tilt. Then came the call from my mother. Not chipper this time. This time her voice was lower, slower. "Sweetheart, is there something you want to tell us?" "Yes. But not yet." I went home, drew the blinds, lit a candle, sat on my couch and opened the box my lawyer had given me. Inside were all the documents from my trust, the paperwork for my new investment accounts, and something else, something she'd flagged as important. A birth certificate. Mine. With a different name on it, and 2 names I didn't recognize listed as mother and father. My heart stuttered. I flipped to the next page. Adoption certificate. Finalized in a small town I'd never heard of, stamped, sealed, real. I stared at the pages, trying to feel something, shock, fury, sadness. But all I felt was clarity. The puzzle pieces clicked into place. Why I looked nothing like them. Why they always kept me at arm's length. Why Vivian always had more because she was theirs, and I was just a paper they'd signed. An obligation, a checkbox, a secret. I sat back on the couch and let the firelight flicker across the truth. For the first time in my life, I finally understood why I was never enough for them. I wasn't meant to be. And now, I didn't owe them anything. Not love, not forgiveness, not money. Especially not money. They say money changes everything, but that's not true. Money reveals. It reveals who never valued you, who only stayed because you were convenient, who would trade their integrity for proximity to wealth. And I was about to test that theory on my entire family. After reading the adoption documents, I didn't cry. I didn't rage. I didn't confront my parents or demand answers. Not because I didn't deserve them, but because I finally realized I didn't need them. They'd made me feel invisible for 29 years, treated me like a guest in my own home, a charity case, an accessory to my sister's glittering spotlight. Now, I had $12 million, silence, and clarity. That was more powerful than their affection ever was. So I made a plan. I hired a second lawyer, a discreet one. We redrafted my identity behind a trust, the Clara Equity Fund. Jules helped me divide the money, some into long-term investments, some into philanthropic ventures, and some into a fund I labeled Freedom. Freedom meant I could leave any time, without notice. I never had to explain myself again. I didn't have to beg for love from people who rationed it. I used part of that fund to rent a sleek apartment in the Arts District, 2 bedrooms, minimalist design, natural light, and 0 shared walls. For the first time in my life, I had space to breathe without guilt attached. I didn't quit my job in a dramatic, "I'm rich now" speech. I gave my 2 weeks, baked muffins for my coworkers, and left quietly. They thought I was moving in with a boyfriend. That made me laugh. Because I wasn't moving in, I was moving on. While Vivian flaunted her latest brand collab on Instagram, I was meeting with architects to design a creative writing center for underserved kids. While Mom posted photos of her redecorated kitchen, funded by Vivian's generous fiancé, I was negotiating a private art grant for a girl I used to mentor at the library. I made power moves not for attention, but for impact. The press caught wind slowly. A few blogs whispered about the mysterious donor behind the library renovation. Then came the regional feature. Who is the woman behind the generosity? They didn't have a photo, just a silhouette. It drove my family mad. One evening, I got a message from my cousin, Tori. "Hey, is it true? The trust that's been funding all this, is that you?" I replied with a smile emoji and nothing more. She sent me 6 more texts. I didn't answer any of them. Then came the dinner invitation from Vivian. Sent in a formal email as if we'd ever needed email before. "Hi, Clara. Hope you're well. We're hosting a dinner to celebrate my engagement and upcoming influencer award. Would love to see you there. It's been too long. XXX, Viv." Attached was a digital invitation. Gold foil background. My name at the bottom. Small font. Smaller meaning. I knew what this was. Not love. Not reconciliation. Curiosity. Because if there's one thing my sister hated more than not being adored, it was not knowing a secret. IRSP'd yes, but I didn't tell her I was coming with an agenda. The dinner was held at a rooftop venue rented, not owned. Classy but trying too hard. Just like her. When I arrived, heads turned. I wore a silk emerald dress and heels that didn't hurt because I'd paid someone to custom fit them. My curls were slicked into a low bun. Simple jewelry. No logo flexing. Just quiet elegance. Vivian's eyes widened, but only for a second. Then she smiled. That glossy influencer smile she'd practiced since she was 10. "Clara," she said, air-kissing me, "you look expensive." I smiled back. I suppose some things age better than others. Touché. The dinner was more photo op than meal. Influencers, wannabe influencers, their managers, their followers, their filtered personalities. My parents were there, of course. Dad wore his college ring like he hadn't insulted me my whole life. Mom wore a dress 2 sizes too tight and tried to act surprised to see me. "Clara," she gasped, touching my arm, "you made it." "You invited me," I said. Her smile dimmed. "Well, yes, but we didn't think you'd—" "Never mind." They danced around the topic like it was hot coals. No one mentioned the donation, or the press, or the fact that they now suspected I was rich. They were waiting for me to say it, but I never gave them the satisfaction. I watched the table from a distance, the way my parents kept glancing at me, the way Vivian's fiancé kept trying to impress me with his job title, the way everyone wanted to know where I was living, what I was driving, who I was dating. I gave them nothing but half smiles and one-word answers, because the less I said, the more they scrambled. Then Vivian asked the one question I'd been waiting for. "So," she said during dessert, "what exactly is it that you do these days?" I took a sip of my wine. "Watch." She tilted her head. "Watch?" "Yes," I said. "I watch people. I watch how they treat those they think are beneath them. I watch how fast they change when they think there's something to gain." Silence. "You're being cryptic," she said, laughing nervously. I leaned in. "Am I?" Her smile faltered, and for the first time in years, I saw something I never thought I'd see in her eyes. Fear. Not because I was dangerous, but because I was no longer predictable. And that made me powerful. The next day, I made another donation. $250,000 to a scholarship fund in the name of C.D. Montgomery. Anonymous again. Still silent. Still watching. They had no idea what was coming. They'd treated me like nothing for so long. Now they were about to learn the cost of that mistake. Because I didn't just win the lottery, I won clarity. And I was done pretending to be less than what I was. They say when someone shows you who they are, believe them the first time. My family showed me 1,000 times. But I kept hoping they'd change, hoping I mattered, hoping there was something inside them that resembled love. But that night at the rooftop dinner wasn't my breaking point. It was the morning after. I was still in bed when my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "Just so you know, Mom's telling people you're jealous of Viv's engagement. You stormed out of the party, LOL." Attached was a screenshot of a Facebook post. Some people just can't stand to see their sibling happy. Jealousy is such an ugly color. Thankful for my real family. Vivian. Of course it was. She hadn't changed. She never would. I stared at the screen until the letters blurred. Not from tears, from clarity. She would never see me as anything more than her backup singer, her foil, her living, breathing contrast to make her shine brighter. Even now, after everything I'd kept quiet, she couldn't help herself. She had to smear me, twist the narrative, make me the bitter one, the broke sister with the bad attitude. And worse, my parents would believe her. They always had. I got out of bed and made tea, sat on the balcony of my new apartment overlooking the quiet skyline. I thought about my childhood, the times I tried to speak up and was told to be nice, don't ruin the mood, stop being dramatic. Every time I told the truth and was shut down because it made them uncomfortable. Every time I swallowed my hurt to keep the peace. That morning, I realized peace built on my silence was never real peace. So I decided something. They wanted a show? I'd give them one. I reached out to Jules and said 4 words. It's time to speak. She didn't ask questions. We booked a private ballroom at the City Museum, modern, glass walls, minimalist design. I sent custom invitations to my family, carefully worded, "You're invited to a private celebration of growth, legacy, and generosity. Formal attire required. Please arrive promptly. C.D. Montgomery. No mention of money. No hint at revenge. Just enough mystery to guarantee attendance. Because if there's one thing my family loved more than status, it was not being left out." A week later, I arrived first. Wearing white, a sharp contrast to every shade of mourning they expected from me. White pantsuit, gold necklace, no labels, no apologies. The room sparkled with soft lighting and delicate orchids, nothing gaudy, just elegance with intention. The venue staff handed out custom programs. On the front, for the ones who went unseen. Vivian was the first to arrive. She wore emerald green and a smirk. "Is this your event?" she asked, looking around. "Because if this is another anonymous donor thing, I have a contact at the Times who'd love to know." I smiled. "I know." She blinked. But before she could ask what I meant, my parents arrived. Dad in his stiff suit. Mom in a beaded dress far too loud for the venue. They both gave me tight, confused smiles. "Where's the honoree?" Dad asked. "You're looking at her," I said. As guests trickled in, I watched the discomfort spread across their faces. There were reporters, community leaders, scholarship recipients, former teachers, librarians, but no one from their country clubs, no influencers, no press focused on designer bags. This wasn't Vivian's crowd. It was mine. I waited until every seat was filled. Then I stepped up to the podium. The room fell silent. I took a breath and told my story. I grew up in a family that didn't see me. Not really. I was always the one in the background. The one asked to take the photo, not be in it. The one who got leftovers instead of applause. And for a long time, I thought it was my fault. I thought if I just worked harder, stayed quieter, gave more, I'd eventually matter. My voice didn't shake. Not once. I watched my parents stiffen. Vivian cross her arms. I continued. But I was wrong. It wasn't about what I lacked. It was about what they couldn't give. Love that wasn't conditional. Respect that wasn't rationed. The kind of recognition that doesn't come with strings. Gasps scattered around the room as I pulled out the final page of my speech. I unfolded it slowly, held it up. My name is Clara Montgomery. I was adopted at 13 months old. My parents never told me. I found out after I won the lottery. Complete silence. I'm not sharing this for sympathy. I'm sharing it because secrets breed shame, and I'm done carrying what isn't mine. My mother's eyes welled. My father's jaw clenched. Vivian? She looked like she'd seen a ghost. I gave away nearly $1 million before I ever told anyone, because I needed to know that generosity, when quiet, still echoes. I've built a foundation for children who feel invisible, because I used to be one of them. And I promise you this, I will never be unseen again. The room erupted in applause, not polite claps, real ones, from people who understood. I stepped down, smiled, and walked past my family without a word. They didn't follow. They wouldn't dare, because for the first time ever, I wasn't walking away with my head down. I was walking away in full light. You'd think the truth would set you free, and it does, but not without consequences. In the days following the gala, my phone became a war zone, calls, Voicemails, emails, messages from people I hadn't spoken to in years. Every contact I'd ever saved suddenly had something to say. But 3 messages mattered most. One from my mother, one from my father, and one from Vivian. Mom's voice message was first. Clara, I didn't know you knew about the adoption. We were going to tell you. We didn't know when. And it never felt like the right time. Please call me. Let's talk about this. Don't let this be the way we fall apart. It took her 30 years to say the word adoption. 30 years to acknowledge the truth I'd lived in silence. I deleted the message. Dad sent a text. Would have appreciated a heads up. That was cruel. Cruel. As if the cruelty was not telling me the truth for my entire life. As if the cruelty wasn't allowing me to believe that my failure to belong was my own doing. As if the cruelty wasn't them. I didn't respond. Then there was Vivian. You're so dramatic. You couldn't just win the lottery and shut up. You had to turn yourself into some martyr. FYI, no one's impressed. Your whole speech just made you look pathetic. Enjoy your orphan pity party. That one made me laugh, because it was such a Vivian thing to say. The insult wrapped in insecurity. The projection dressed in designer spite. I saved it. Not for evidence, just for a reminder. A reminder that no matter how well I played the game, she'd always think I was beneath her. And that's why she lost. I wasn't angry. I was free. And freedom meant clarity. I didn't need revenge. I needed boundaries. I went dark after the gala. No posts, no interviews, no explanations. I moved to a new apartment overlooking the river, hired a therapist, donated another $500,000 to create a scholarship fund for adopted teens aging out of foster care. I called it the Clara Grant, named after the girl I used to be, the one who waited by the door for her family to say they were proud of her, the one who never got picked first, the one who mattered anyway. For the first time, I stopped thinking in survival mode. I stopped wondering what I needed to do to earn a seat at a table that never saw me as enough, because I was building my own table now, and it was long, wide, welcoming. About a month after the gala, I got a letter in the mail, handwritten, no return address. The envelope just said, Clara. The handwriting was familiar. Vivian. I stared at it for a long time before opening it. Inside were 4 short sentences. I always knew something was different. You were the quiet one, the one who didn't need the spotlight. Maybe that's why it scared me how much people listen when you finally speak. No apology, no acknowledgement, no remorse, just a truth she didn't know how to say out loud. She was afraid of me, not physically, existentially, because I didn't need approval, and people who build their identities on praise are terrified of those who don't. I folded the letter and tossed it into the fireplace, watched it burn until the ink melted and the paper curled. Let it die, not as an act of anger, but as closure. Some things aren't meant to be framed. They're meant to be released. A week later, I took a train to a small coastal town. No itinerary, no announcements. Just me, my journal, and the sound of waves. I walked along the beach, ate pastries from a bakery that smelled like memory. I sat in a sunlit cafe and wrote down 10 things I was grateful for. My silence, my voice, my solitude, my intuition, my courage, my scars, my strength, my ability to walk away, my chosen family, the little girl who never gave up on me. She had been there all along, waiting, watching, whispering, "You are not the sum of what they couldn't give." One night, while sipping tea on my new balcony, I received an email from a young girl. Subject: Your speech saved me. She said she had been adopted too, that she'd spent years wondering why her family loved her brothers more, that she saw my video and cried for an hour. She ended with this: "I thought being invisible meant I didn't matter, but you made me feel seen. Thank you, I cried reading it. Not because I was sad, because I was proud. Not of the money, not of the donations, but of who I'd become. I wasn't the family disappointment, I was the survivor. And now, I was the voice." When people can no longer control you, they try to rewrite your story. That's what my family did. They couldn't reach me anymore, not through guilt, not through shame, not through obligation. So they turned to the only weapon they had left: public perception. It started small. A few posts on Facebook. Families aren't perfect, but we always try our best. Parenting doesn't come with a manual. We do it with love, even when it's hard. Just because someone has money doesn't mean they have the whole story. They didn't mention me by name. They didn't have to. Their friends, and more importantly, Vivian's followers, understood the subtext. Poor Clara. Ungrateful, distant, difficult. Then came the real play. A press piece. Not national, but big enough to sting. Local influencer Vivian Carlton opens up about family rift. Sometimes people cut you off, and you never really know why. Vivian in full lighting, all tears and vulnerability, talking about sisterhood, about secrets, about forgiving people who hurt you when they're hurting themselves. I didn't need to be tagged. Everyone who knew us knew, and just like that, I was the villain again. The bitter one. The one who'd pushed away a loving family. I got dozens of messages that week. Some supportive, most not. Money changes people. Your sister's classier than you'll ever be. You're nothing but a spiteful brat in designer shoes. For a moment I considered firing back, writing an op-ed, releasing receipts, posting side-by-sides of their fake smiles and real texts. But then I remembered something Jules once told me. A queen doesn't argue with peasants. She builds a castle so tall their noise can't reach her. So I didn't clap back. I climbed higher. I launched my foundation officially, no longer anonymous. The Clara Foundation for Unseen Children debuted with a full-page spread in the city's largest paper, a mission statement, a press release, a soft launch event featuring survivors of neglect and foster care. Every face was real, every story authentic. It wasn't about me. It was about who I used to be and who I still carried inside. Vivian posted a story that night with the caption, "Some people need a cause to feel important. I just need my truth." But truth wasn't something you whispered in captions. Truth was something you lived. The next day, my father showed up at my new apartment. Unannounced, uninvited. I found him standing at the lobby entrance, talking to the concierge like he had every right to be there. He wore that old leather jacket he thought made him look youthful. When he saw me, he smiled like nothing had ever happened. "Clara," he said. "Nice place." I didn't smile back. "What do you want?" He didn't flinch. "Lunch, a talk, maybe some peace." I crossed my arms. "You never wanted peace. You wanted compliance." He held up his hands. "Look, I know things got messy, but we're family." "No," I said. "You're my biological guardians. That's not the same thing." He exhaled. "You're angry." "Number, I'm awake." He shifted, visibly uncomfortable. "Your mother's not doing well with all this." She didn't seem too broken up when she was liking passive-aggressive posts about me. She's old school. She didn't know how to tell you. She didn't try. Silence. Then he said the quiet part out loud. "Vivian's struggling financially. She's lost some sponsors since all this started." I laughed. There it was. The real reason. I see, I said. So now you come here, what? Hoping I'll write her a check to keep her followers? He didn't deny it. He just said, you have more than you need. She's hurting. She's hurting? I repeated. You mean the girl who called me a charity case? Who mocked me for being adopted? Who spent her life climbing up on my back? I stepped closer. She's not hurting. She's losing control. And that's not my problem anymore. I walked back inside without another word. I didn't look back. He didn't follow. That night, I got one last message. From my mother. I don't know who you are anymore. I stared at it for a long time and finally replied, I'm the woman you raised in the shadows. You just never bothered to know her. A reckoning doesn't always come with thunder. Sometimes it arrives in silence, in the decision not to reply, in the dinner invitation you ignore, in the seat you refuse to fill at someone else's table. Sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is nothing. And that's exactly what I did. I didn't respond to any more messages. Not my mother's guilt-tripping texts, not my father's quiet calls, not Vivian's fake sob stories cloaked in PR-friendly posts. I didn't owe them access to me anymore. They had mistaken proximity for privilege. They thought because we shared blood, they had a claim to my energy. But I was done pouring my worth into people with bottomless cups. I began hosting quiet salons in my home. Groups of women, mostly survivors of emotional abuse, estranged daughters, scapegoats, adopted children. We'd drink tea, share stories, light candles, cry, laugh. Not a single person in those rooms ever asked for anything from me. They just saw me, and I saw them. That's when I realized I didn't need a family. I had a village, one I'd built intentionally, honestly, and with love. Then one Sunday, I received a letter. Not from my parents, not from Vivian, from someone else entirely, a name I didn't recognize, a woman in her late 60s. She introduced herself as Margaret L. Douglas, a retired nurse. Dear Clara, she wrote, I've carried a truth for years I wasn't sure I was allowed to share. But after seeing your foundation and hearing your story, I think you deserve to know. She worked at the adoption agency that processed my paperwork 29 years ago. She remembered me. I was one of the quiet babies, she said, always wide-eyed, clingy with the kind staff, but cried when strangers held me. She included scanned records from the early file, handwritten notes about me, my original name, Elena Grace, a name no one ever told me. The letter said my biological mother was young, barely 19, alone, scared, desperate. But she'd asked for one thing. Please make sure she ends up somewhere with people who love her. That's all I want. I stared at the paper for a long time, and for the first time in this journey, I cried, because I had spent my entire life believing I was hard to love. But there it was, love, written in ink, from a girl who never got to hold me. I didn't know her name, but I whispered thank you into the empty room anyway. I framed the letter, not for decoration, for proof. Proof that love can exist, even when it's taken from you, even when you grow up in its absence. Weeks later, I received a formal invitation, a family reunion, Vivian's wedding weekend. Apparently, she still planned to go through with it smaller, less press. But she'd invited the whole extended family, and yes, she invited me. The envelope was thick, embossed, expensive. There was even a handwritten note inside. Let's put the past behind us. Family is all we have. I stared at it. Then I picked up my pen and wrote 5 simple words in reply. We don't share the same past. And I mailed it back. The day of her wedding, I went for a hike. No phone, no signal, no noise, just nature, breath, ground beneath my feet. I passed a small lake and watched the sun hit the water like fire. I imagined her walking down the aisle, her father, not mine anymore, standing proudly, my mother wiping tears, and I felt nothing. Not rage, not jealousy, not grief, just stillness. Because they didn't matter the way they used to, not because they'd changed, but because I had. I was no longer trying to be chosen. I was choosing myself. Every day. Without apology. Years ago, I believed that healing looked like reconciliation, like family dinners where everyone finally understood me, like apologies that came with tears and transformation, like being invited back into the warmth I was denied for decades. But now I know better. Healing doesn't always look like going back. Sometimes healing is building something beautiful without the people who broke you. A year had passed since the gala. 12 months of freedom, silence, creation. The Clara Foundation had expanded. We'd funded therapy programs for teens, built transitional housing for kids aging out of foster care, partnered with art collectives to give voice to the unseen. But none of that made headlines, because we didn't seek attention. We sought impact. I was sitting in a studio space one I'd purchased and donated to a nonprofit when a young girl walked up to me. 16, maybe 17, bright eyes, nervous smile. She held out a drawing. Me. Sitting under a tree, pen in hand, smile soft. Above my head, in bold, scrawled lettering, she gave us a name when no one else remembered we had one. I stared at it, stunned. She whispered, "I used to think being invisible meant I wasn't real." I blinked back tears. "Now?" I asked. She grinned. "Now I know I just hadn't met the right people yet." I hung the drawing in my living room, right above the fireplace, where my family's Christmas cards used to go. Now, there were no cards, no forced photos, no fake cheer, just art and truth. On my 30th birthday, I took a solo trip to a quiet vineyard tucked into a hill. No headlines, no celebration, just wine, wind, and wildflowers. I sat in a wicker chair, wrapped in a shawl, and wrote a letter I never intended to send. To my adoptive parents. "Dear Mom and Dad, I forgive you. Not because you asked, not because you earned it, but because I refuse to carry what you did any longer. I forgive the silence, the favoritism, the moments you made me feel like an accident instead of a choice. I forgive the lies, the ones you told me and the ones you told yourselves, but I will not return. I will not come home, because I already have one and it's not where you are. I hope one day you find peace with who you chose to be. I already have. Clara." I folded it, placed it under a rock near the vineyard's olive tree. Let the wind carry the rest. I no longer need a seat at their table. I have my own. And at it sit the girls who call me mentor, the women who call me sister, even though we share no blood, the elders who tell me, "Thank you for reminding me I still matter." A legacy doesn't begin when people praise you. It begins when you refuse to disappear. One evening, while watching the sunset bleed over the city skyline, I whispered a quiet promise. I will never again shrink for the comfort of others. I toasted the horizon and smiled, because I hadn't just escaped the darkness. I had become the light. 6 months later, the Clara Foundation receives an anonymous donation. No note, just a wire transfer. $50, a small amount. But attached to it was a name, Elena Grace. I stared at the screen for a long, long time. Maybe it was coincidence. Maybe it wasn't. Maybe someone out there, someone I never knew or never got to meet, was watching, saying thank you, or saying hello. Either way, I smiled. Because sometimes the family we dream of doesn't show up how we expect. but they find us anyway. She was born forgotten, raised in shadows, branded the bitter one the ungrateful child. But when truth came knocking, she didn't just open the door, she walked through it. And on the other side, she built a life no one could take from her. This wasn't a story of revenge. It was a story of rebirth. And the girl they tried to erase, she became the woman they could never silence. This was The Light I Became, only on Flame and Fate Chronicles. What was your favorite moment? Drop it in the comments below. Don't miss more inspiring stories like this. Subscribe and hit that notification bell so you never miss an upload.